for economists, I guess, as they've been watching the markets bustling with a stronger rand and steady bonds. The markets were rejoicing over the exit of former President Jacob Zuma and the ushering in of Cyril Ramaphosa as President number 5 in a democratic era. But the new president is inheriting an economy in tatters. How will he cope? Will transforming it in only 18 months, because that's how much he's got in terms of an audition for next elections. Well, Maudi Lentsoane is a managing director at Lehoma Investments, and he joins us now in studio. Let's talk about this rand. I mean, yesterday when I looked at the figures, I actually had to refresh a couple of times because I thought I got them wrong. Yeah. But it was quite remarkable what happened yesterday, and that was even before the actual resignation. So I think that markets had pretty much decided it was going to happen. But why so much exuberance and excitement?
No, thank you for having me here, Peter. And I think you're quite right. I mean, we started having the reaction well ahead of the much anticipated resignation letter. And this was primarily because the NEC had already spoken and recalled him. And once the NEC had done that, it almost confirmed that he was on his way out. So that's why we started seeing the reaction well ahead of his official resignation. And I think, it's been long coming. The fact of the matter is, Zuma's administration has done so much damage to the South African economy that, just getting that confirmation that he's out would have been a first step towards addressing all the problems that South Africa has. So that's why you're seeing all this positive sentiment.
Why is it that the markets have been able to separate Cyril Ramaphosa from this government? Because he was deputy president, head of government business. He was at the center of it.
No, he was. But ultimately, the last line of defense, it's the man in charge, which is the president. So far as you are as a second to the president, you don't have the same authority that the president has. And of course, we all know, the problems that South Africa faced, the state capture problems that we face. Those are the things that had to do a lot with the president, Jacob Zuma himself, that his friends, the Guptas, obviously implicated in all those state capture. Those are the friends of Jacob Zuma, and that's why Cyril was able to come out to say, look, I stand for a different view, and therefore that's why the investors read Cyril as probably the best person to get the economy out of the problems.
All right, so what does he need to do for this economy? Because, for a long time, President Zuma often talked about coming out of recession. It's not just us. Yeah. But I think the numbers showed that we should have been doing better than comparative economies, and we just weren't there. So there were own goals that we were scoring. Yep. And I wonder what those own goals are that Cyril Ramaphosa has to plug and what he has to do going forward.
Those own goals, well documented. I mean, number of changes to some of the key ministerial positions. The reshuffling of the ministers without, giving proper reasons, justifiable reasons, and just basically destabilizing the whole government. Those are some of the own goals that have to be not repeated. Secondly, turning a blind eye on what was evident signs of corruption, a rooted corruption, which had turned our state-owned enterprises into a joke, non-performing, continuous losing a lot of money. So Cyril, if he's to turn this economy around, he has to take care of, number one, root out all the wastages that we've seen in the state-owned enterprises. Take care of that. And also, of course, we have to ensure that those that are corrupt, they are prosecuted, and ensure that we clamp down on the leakages that we've had.
So how does he balance the books? He's inheriting this business that's in debt, that is spending more than it's earning, and is finding it difficult to borrow because the creditors are saying that you're not creditworthy. Yeah. How does he, and also he's not getting much revenue in from the tax line as well. So how does this business survive, which is called South Africa?
Yeah, I think, let me quote some of the famous words by one of the U.S. economists, Larry Summers, when he said, and which is true, confidence is the most efficient form of stimulus one can ever have to the economy. What Cyril has is the confidence, the investor confidence. It's the best stimulus ever. So he's starting off a very positive ground. The fact that the investors are positive. When investors are positive, they'll look at Brand South Africa with a positive view, come to South Africa. We've already seen it reflected on the rand. They are coming to South Africa to do investments, to look for those opportunities, to create jobs for our people, which is the much needed jobs that South Africans need. We sit with the unemployment at 27%. It cannot be. We sit with the economy that is growing under 1% when the GDP, or rather the population, is growing at about 2%. So doing 3% for this economy is not enough. We need to do far more than that. And what we've done, before he even do anything, he's done one thing. He brings with himself confidence, which is very important.
And also, when businesses think about recovery, there's two things you've got to do. The one side is increase income, and that could be tax revenue. Yep. So the budget next week is going to be important, and we may see things like VAT. Let's talk about the income statement first. Yep. Where's the money going to come from to create revenue for this business that we're trying to save?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think while it looks much better, the picture looks much brighter going forward in the long run. In the short term, we've got all these challenges that have to be addressed. The books are not balancing. We've got expenditure which surpass revenue. So there are a number of areas where we would unfortunately have to look at to address these immediate needs. And unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news and say more tax increases will have to be implemented to be able to plug the gap which exists. So there could be a number of things, and I think the one that has been talked about but never implemented is the VAT issue. Probably we could look in that area where it's not a popular one politically.
Yeah. But globally, we're quite low in comparison, aren't we? Right. So we've got space, I think, to raise it a little bit.
That is correct. I mean, most of the countries are averaging around 15%. So we're sitting at 14%. So, and VAT is one of the less cumbersome when it comes to administratively easy to administer. 1% raises quite enough to be able to plug some of the shortfall. We've got, the free education that has been announced. We've got a number of other expenditures that obviously have been announced, and we've got to plug in that gap. But the key one is the fact that we need to stop the leakages through our state-owned enterprises, ESCOM, SAA, you name them.
Unauthorized expenditure, fruitless and wasteful. So that's the income side, revenue, but the other side is you cut expenditure. And if you compare Nelson Mandela's cabinet and you compare Jacob Zuma's cabinet, I think, is almost double the size of Nelson Mandela, but it's the same country. Yep. That has got to be one thing he has to address.
Very problematic. That has been the one area where we've said time and again that he's got to rein in on that. We cannot continue to have such an expansion, the cabinet which is bigger than all the other presidents that we've had in the past, and continuing to spend recklessly on a number of things. So he has to rein in on that and ensure that he reforms, structural reforms, those changes. And there's a lot of savings to be made if he gets that right.
And I would imagine, we've got Chapter 9 institutions, the public protector, fund that properly so that we stop those kinds of leakages. But at the same time, the Auditor General seems to be just goes in, reports and leaves. Should the Auditor General have more teeth to be able to enforce and to be able to make things happen? Because that's where most of the money is leaking, isn't it?
No, that's definitely. I mean, there's a lot of work that, as I said, the new administration has to really try and make sure that we get things right. And you are absolutely right. You can't just give you the report and leave it there and not really have the ways of enforcing all those maladministration or mismanagement of funds. There've got to be prices for doing wrong, and we've got to be seen really implementing and making sure that those that are mismanaging the funds are held accountable.
So what happens to our state-owned enterprises, which really should be the engines of growing the economy and stimulating growth, but they've been the ones sucking us dry. How do we turn those around?
You know, the first step that I've seen that have been taken is that we've had changes and very positive changes that we've seen at Eskom, for example. The board, the new board that has come in has brought in, you know, the new hope that they will, of course, you know, manage things differently than as compared to the previous board. And that's where you start. You know, the corporate governance, issues of corporate governance needs to be adhered to. So that's the positive changes that I've seen. If we continue to make sure that the board, you know, it's properly well run, and these institutions can really be profitable, the likes of SAA. Also, we've had some changes there. We've had the new CEO come on board. So it's a matter of really giving those people an opportunity to make the changes that are necessary.
Do we have time? That's the thing. Do we have time? Because these things have to happen yesterday almost. But to change the culture, A, of people not paying, B, the municipalities collecting, so that the Escoms of this world can get the money that's due to them. To change that culture is going to take a bit of time and effort.
It is going to take a bit of time. Do we have time, before the rating agencies? I think we've done just about enough to probably avert the rating downgrade, because that was the immediate thing that we needed to address. If we couldn't address the issue of a downgrade, then we were certainly on a one-way to a disaster. But I think now that we've sort of almost 80 to 90% taken care of that part, I think we're on the right path.
All right, so you know what, I'm going to pause for a second, because what I'd like us to do right now